Welcome everybody to the Ask the Expert session for the Empowered Developer session that we just had with Donovan. So my name is Isaac Levin. I'm Senior Product Marketing Manager at Microsoft, and I want to go ahead and introduce these great folks that we have on. So as we go to, let's talk about how to engage with our expert, right? The first thing I want people to call out is that if you have a question, please ask it in chat. We have some people that are not only on screen answering questions, but behind the scenes answering questions as well. Want to make sure that all of your questions are answered. I'm going to be the moderator for this, and I want to call out to etiquette. So it's really, really important that these sessions are they're recorded, and our moderators don't spam or post inappropriate comments to them. And obviously, follow Microsoft's code of conduct. You can read this all across the Ignite site. So here are our experts. So I want to go through each individual one of them and ask them one by one. So Donovan, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Donovan Brown. I am a partner program manager on the Azure Incubations team.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Dean, and I'm a senior cloud advocate on the cloud advocacy team working under Abel Wang.
Bob.
My name is Bob Sayre. I am the general manager of Azure Communication Services.
And finally, Abel.
My name is Abel. I'm a principal cloud advocate and the DevOps lead for the Cloud Advocates.
Awesome. And again, my name is Isaac Levin, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Microsoft. So I want to get started just talking a little bit about the session that we just saw, Donovan. One of the cool things that I really think there's great news coming out in the Azure space for this event. You want to talk about some of the things that have really excited you that you've seen so far?
It's interesting because when I look at Azure, it's not one particular event or one particular announcement that gets me excited about Azure. I mean, we've been a developer-led company from day one, and it shows through the innovations that we do, the way that we're trying to make the ability to take your code from your development machine and we're hosting it in the cloud as easy as possible, that we're constantly obsessing over the developers and the customers that we have. So I can't single out one individual thing that happened at Ignite. I just love the fact that every time I go to an event like this, I start to see the ways that we're just obsessing on making my life as a developer easier. And that's what I loved about this session. It wasn't me talking to strangers or me talking to other people. It was me talking to my peers and sharing with them how we're making our lives as a developer easier. That just really got me excited about Ignite.
Yeah, that's great. I feel the same way, right? I get excited whenever we do our events, right? Just even though I know what's coming, I still get excited. It's very, very funny, right? And I think the big thing that has come out of this event that I think really makes the developers super excited is Azure Communication Services going generally available. Bob,
Sure.
So when you think about Azure Communication Services, like what's the number one thing that you think of developers can take advantage of it?
I think there's actually a couple things. So first of all, I love the fact that we're talking about developers here and we're part of Azure. So this is a product that's part of Azure's that will appeal to and be very easy to use for Azure developers. But the value to your business is going to be we built Azure Communication Services on the same global scaled infrastructure that powers Microsoft Teams, which powers over 100 million daily active users every day. So it scales, it's rich, it's performance, it's secure. And what we've done is we've used Azure to expose the communication primitives in an easy set of APIs and the Azure SDK to make it really easy for developers to embed communication workflows into your applications and websites.
That's great. Yeah, we saw a little preview of it at Ignite in the fall. In September, we did some stuff as part of Scott Hansman's keynote. And I think one of the big things that we took away from that is that this thing is going to be awesome when it comes out. And I think we've already seen a lot of chatter around ACS and one of the things that it can do. So it's very, very exciting. And I think as somebody like Jess, who, we talked a little bit about Azure Communication Services and how it fits into all these different things. And one of the things that we were able to do with the demo in the previous session is we talked about integrating into not just a regular website, but a huge website. So, how easy was it for you to get that plugged in?
So I was actually very impressed as to how easy it was to get started. First, prior to actually integrating it into Tailwind Traders, I wanted to go hands-on with Azure Communication Services to understand it. And anytime I try to understand anything new Azure, and this sounds probably like I'm hyping it up, but it's the honest truth, I always go to docs.microsoft.com. And the ACS team has really incredible docs that allowed me to deploy 2 different instances. I could deploy a text instance or a voice chat instance. And obviously in the demo, we went with implementing the voice chat instance. Once I could kind of see how easy it was to deploy it and work with it and take a look at the code firsthand, it was really easy to then understand how I could integrate that to something like Tailwind Traders. And for those of you who don't know, Tailwind Traders itself, at least in the demo and anytime I present it, is always hosted on Azure Kubernetes Service. It's made up of 11 different microservices. It has a .NET component, which was recently upgraded to .NET 5. It has Node, it has Java, it has Go. I mean, it's very real world. And we were able to implement ACS in, I want to say, less than 200 lines of code. It was incredibly easy.
Yeah, well, even if it wasn't easy, I think you'd make it look pretty easy. I think one of the things that people don't know about Jessica is that she literally can do anything. You just give her a task and she just gets it done. I mean, awesome. So finally, we're gonna go to Abel. So Abel, you are the rockstar developer, right? You're the DevOps guy who knows all sorts of great things from a dev perspective. So when we talk about code to cloud, like what gets you super excited about that and some of the tools that we use to get code to cloud faster?
I just like how everything is so much easier now, right? I mean, we really want to make it so it's kind of a turnkey where you don't even have to worry about it anymore. You just get CI/CD because that's just what you do, right? So just having the ability from Visual Studio with one right click and all of a sudden I have a CI/CD pipeline using GitHub Actions, that's super sick, right? And then I can tweak it and make my workflow do literally anything, right? Like the demo showed, I can start from nothing at all and completely blow out my provision, my infrastructure that I need, configure everything, deploy. That's sick. That makes me really, really happy, both as a developer and also as a DevOps guy.
No, that's awesome. I think, when we talk about code to cloud, it's, using a bunch of tools together to make our lives easier, right? Like Donovan talked a little bit about during the session where he talked about developer velocity, right? And this concept of getting folks more efficient, faster, but also continuing with the great quality. I want to call out, someone did mention, Donovan, your Captain America shield behind you, right? I think people, they always get to see all sorts of fun stuff when they're at people's houses, right? I think, some of the folks on this call, they take a lot of pride in what behind them looks like. I think that's very, very clear. And me and Bob, we're just living our best life here. I mean, so Bob, I want to go to you about ACS, right? So one of the things that I think is really, really exciting about ACS is it has this suite of services, right? And I think, there are other, I guess, services out there. So how does ACS differentiate itself between some of the other, I guess you would say, more mature platforms?
So there's a couple things. So first, I already mentioned the infrastructure that ACS is built on, which is the same infrastructure that is secure and global and scalable that powers Microsoft Teams. The second thing is that it is built as an Azure product. And so being in Azure and being part of the Azure product suite, it allows developers to basically take advantage of the goodness in terms of Azure APIs, the SDK footprints, the breadth of SDK support, as well as any of the other support that you get while developing, like billing and telemetry and just other kind of things that'll help you be successful there. Since it's in Azure, then it's also easy to integrate with other Azure products. So in our demo earlier, we showed the ease of use to integrate with Logic Apps, for example, and we've also shown integration with Bot Framework and with Cognitive Services. And being, if your workloads are already running in Azure, then you also have advantages of saving on network bandwidth. But the final sort of thing that we just introduced today is the public preview of Teams Interop. So now you can build an external B2C, call it, application that is in your mobile app or on your website, and those external users can communicate into your internal Teams users who are already using Microsoft Teams. And we think that'll be a huge benefit for the customers of Azure Communication Services.
Yeah, I think people are definitely super excited about ACS. I think also one thing that people are super excited about is GitHub Actions, right? But when people think about GitHub Actions, they think of, okay, well, Microsoft has this huge service called Azure DevOps and this thing called Azure Pipelines. And people are sometimes they have some questions about what the differentiators between the two are. So Donovan, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. The way that I look at GitHub Actions versus Azure DevOps is the fact that we're giving you choice at Microsoft. You can choose whichever one of those tools fits the problem that you're trying to solve. The best analogy I can think of is that screw that you've all seen that looks like you could put a Phillips head screwdriver in there, but then there's a line across it just long enough to where you could put a flathead in there too. And what tool are you going to use? you're going to use the screwdriver that's closest to you to drive that screw. And that's what I look at the problem is. You have a flathead screwdriver and you have a Phillips head screwdriver. And there's also a series of questions you can ask yourself. First question is, where's your code? If your code is not in GitHub, then you need to go to Azure DevOps immediately because we can get your code from anywhere. If your code is inside of GitHub, I would tell you to evaluate GitHub Actions and see if it does everything that it is that you need. If it does, great. It's right there. It's convenient. Go ahead and use it. If it doesn't quite fit your needs, go look at Azure DevOps and see if there's the features that you need are in there. So don't look at it as an either or, because you can use them both interchangeably and use one for one project and one for another. So to me, it's not about either or. It's more about a question of choice. And now we give you that at Microsoft.
Totally agree. I think one of the things that a lot of people, aren't aware of is that you can use Azure Pipelines and Azure Boards right inside of GitHub, right? Yep. You have that full integration there. So it's not like, to your point, it's not a matter of which platform you use, but what individual tool you want to use, right? And I think that analogy with the screwdriver is great. I think.
Hey, Isaac.
Did you want to add something to Nova?
Hey, Isaac, I just wanted to throw something out there because you can even use GitHub Actions to trigger an Azure DevOps pipeline as well. Right? you can integrate this as deeply as you need to.
Yeah, and I think the integration story is great, and it's just getting better. I think the ability to just as simple as have one place where you can hop around between individual things, it's super awesome. Yeah. We did have a kind of a really direct question about Azure Communication Services and phone numbers, right? So, Bob, do you want to talk about what kind of phone numbers are supported through Azure Communication Services?
You're muted.
You're on mute.
I knew that was going to happen at least once. Yeah, so we currently support provisioning phone numbers in the US today for PSTN and SMS, and you're able to use those phone numbers anywhere Azure Communication Services is deployed, which is globally. And then we're going to be rolling out support to provision numbers in new areas, as well as things like doing SMS shortcodes. Those are all on a roadmap and it'll be coming soon.
Awesome. So Jessica, so when we talked, one of the things that we did during the demo was we talked a little bit about the fact that Tailwind Traders has this huge architecture, right? It's using a bunch of different parts. And one of the things that you talked a little bit about was how GitHub Actions, it works seamlessly with deploying Kubernetes clusters. So you want to talk a little bit about that and why you would want to deploy things like Kubernetes on top of GitHub Actions? You're on mute.
Everyone
I pushed the button, but I wasn't in the Teams window. So hard to automate your hotkeys sometimes. Am I still on mute?
Nope, you're good.
No, okay. We can hear you.
Because I still have a little notice that says unmute your mic. Okay, so to recap the question, why would I want to deploy something to Kubernetes using something like GitHub Actions? And again, going back to Donovan's kind of point as far as you can choose whatever tool works for you. If you want a Phillips, if you want a flathead, I would want to deploy something that's as complex as Kubernetes with some sort of DevOps plan, DevOps set of best practices. If my code is already in GitHub, then I absolutely want to use GitHub Actions. If my code is in Azure, then I'll want to use pipelines. But in either scenario, because of how complex Kubernetes is, because of how when you start getting into a more cloud native world, you've broken down your monolith, you've decoupled your APIs, you don't want to leave that up to managing things randomly. You want something that's going to be reliable. And in my opinion, setting up the deployment and the pipeline, for example, the PR workflow that we used in the demo, GitHub Actions made that incredibly simple, even though it was a complex architecture design. I think there was maybe 5 or 6 tasks, 50 lines of YAML, and all of that was going to work the same way every single time.
Yeah, and I think that's one, Dave, Abel pointed a little bit in his part of the demo as well, where it's like, provisioning the infrastructure, deploying your app, making sure that your app is following particular guidelines, right? That's super awesome. And the fact that it's YAML is great. But Abel, people still have concerns about YAML, right? So it's, it's one of those things where people, I think, are a little bit scared of it, a little bit confused by it. Do you want to talk about why you love YAML so much?
Absolutely. So I totally get why people don't like YAML, right? Because it's let's be honest, it's a pain to author. However, you get some huge benefits by using YAML. The biggest is your pipeline now, you get to check it in to source control. and you check it into source control right alongside your code. So now everything gets versioned together, right? Now that becomes really, really powerful for a couple of reasons. Number one, now if you do change your workflow or you do change your pipeline, you can go through the same type of pull request, review type of workflow that you would do for your source code. That's awesome. And the other thing that I love is because everything gets versioned together, check this out now. If somebody forks my repo now, they fork everything. Not only do they fork my source code, not only do they fork my database schema that also gets versioned with my code, they also get my pipelines at that specific point in time. That right there totally rocks, right? So again, I get it. It's nice to use a UI, but having your workflow or having your pipelines defined as YAML, you get some major benefits from that.
Yeah, one of the things I would add to that as well, Abel, is that there has been some improvements when it comes to authoring YAML. Like there's better extensions inside of Visual Studio Code. There's also the ability to use the task assistant that will actually write that snippet of YAML that you need to put inside of your actual definition. And one of the things that I think is really important to understand about YAML is not only the cool things that you mentioned, but I was not a fan of YAML, still not the biggest fan of it, but there was that point in time where you realize that you must have it. And we're a team that makes sure that you run a pull request before any of your code can make it into your main branch. And if your build is not inside of your repository, you're going to find out you're going to get into a situation where you can't actually commit in your code because the code that you want to commit has to change the build definition to compile, but you can't change the build definition because it's not in your source code repository. And all of a sudden you're stuck because I can't succeed through my pull request because my build won't succeed because I have to go change the build definition. And if you go and change the build definition so that your code can succeed, you're potentially breaking every other developer who wants the build to look like it used to look. So that's when the light bulb went on for me, like, oh, now I understand why I need this, not because I prefer it over the other one, but I cannot succeed with this pull request unless the build definition is actually a part of my code,
Sure,
that I can change it as a unit and then actually push the unit through my pull request, not just a build definition. So I remember when that light came on for me, I was like, okay, I just have to bite the bullet and get good at this. And then that's when I noticed the more you do it, it's like anything else, it gets easier. And also the tooling is starting to get a lot better as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree there with the fact that the tooling has started to get substantially better, right? Like you're seeing better linting and all the different IDEs that exist. Speaking of IDEs, Bob, when we were doing the demo for the feature session, you hopped in there and you were writing a whole bunch of JavaScript code to be able to get ACS wired up into Tailwind traders. So I think one of the questions I think a lot of people are going to ask is like, what languages can you use to write against and work against Azure Communication Services?
So Azure Communication Services is a set of public APIs, public REST APIs. We support the same SDKs that the Azure SDK supports. So you can code in JavaScript, Java, Python, and .NET Core. And then if you're going to build a calling application and you want to build voice and video in your client apps, then we have calling SDKs for iOS, Android, and JavaScript.
Awesome. Yeah, and one of the great things that I love about all the Azure SDKs is they're all in a very similar vein, right? Like communicating with the different APIs is very, very similar. So as somebody who hasn't had an opportunity to take a look at the Azure SDKs, the ACS one is a great first option. So when we talk about just innovation and platform and tools in general, like we've talked about a handful of things, right? We talked about innovative new platforms. I think ACS is that, and then the right tools to do the right job. I think the screwdriver example is great. But Donovan, when we're talking about how do people get started, right? Say for instance, put your developer hat on and think, okay, I have this plethora of options now of things to do. Like what should help me in determining what tools I should use or what methods I should take to be the most successful and deliver value to my customers?
I think the last word you said there was the most important one. The focus is on value, right? It's not a tools discussion. It's about delivering value as quickly as you possibly can. And what you're going to do is then choose whatever tool that you need to get you there. For example, everyone's all revved up and loves Kubernetes, and I get it, but your application does not have to run in Kubernetes. Containers are not the answer for everything. And if you're not used to them, that just, to me, there's a barrier of entry there. There's a learning curve that you have to overcome to get into a container. But why are you not looking at app service? Why are you not looking at functions? Why are you not looking at the entire portfolio that is Azure for all the different ways that we can get your workload into the cloud? hands down, my favorite service in Azure is App Service, like hands down, because it allowed me to take my WAR file, my Node.js application, my Python, my Ruby, like I said in the session, and I can just lift it and shift it without worrying about anything, and it just runs. And I get zero downtime deployments, I get deployment slots, I get scalability, and I don't have to worry about anything about a Docker file or Helm or Kubernetes, and I still get all that power. And to me, it's this cool little service that not only can take it as it was on my hard drive, but if I do want to start experimenting with containers, I can actually create a container of that app and then still use App Service to pull down that image and run it for me. So I can kind of baby step my way into, okay, now I understand containers. Now I do need Kubernetes, and I already have this image that I can use. But I started with this like beautiful Swiss Army knife service that is App Service. That I just love it because I run a lot of production sites out of App Service today, because it's just so flexible and so easy to use, and I have so many languages that I can use it with. So to get started, again, to answer your exact question, is just look at the problem you're trying to solve. It might not be Kubernetes, it might be Azure Functions, it might be App Service, hell, it might be a VM that you spin up that's running Linux or running the version of Windows that you need. But there's so many options inside of Azure. Wherever you want to start, we probably have a service that's going to let you start there.
That's great. And you mentioned Kubernetes, so the immediate person that I want to talk to regarding Kubernetes is Jess, right?
Sure.
So Jess, when we're talking about Kubernetes and lighting it up, what are the immediate, when I think about learning new things, the first thing that I always get fearful of is like, okay, what is going to break the second I try to do this? So what is your tips that you have out there for folks that are just getting started, they want to spin up, but they know they're going to run into issues? What issues should people be looking out for to try to avoid?
Making sure I'm off mute this time.
Good.
Very deliberate. Very deliberate.
Making sure you can still hear me because I got to pop up something. Okay, great. So my first tip is don't focus on Kubernetes. If you're just getting started, you have to understand containers, and you have to understand what a container is, what its purpose is, how it functions, the security behind the container concept. It's not just the security of your code. It's literally the security of your container itself. And once you've mastered that, once you've deployed out containers locally, right, you can work with containers without ever touching the cloud. Get comfortable with packaging up your application inside a Docker container first, and then you could start playing with Kubernetes actually within Docker for desktop. This is one of the things that I always demo. It's super simple to set up because whether you're on Windows, Mac, Linux, you check a little box and you get a little local Kubernetes cluster. So then you can kind of start gradually stepping into it. Now, if you want to start adding in support with the cloud, the easiest way to have your app inside a container that's backed by Kubernetes, and actually would probably be with an API or like batch job as you start kind of implementing, is leverage Azure App Service for your front end and start putting your APIs and your batch jobs in Azure container instances. Because on the back end of container instances is still Kubernetes. And then from there, you can take it even further into actually starting to go hands-on with Kubernetes with Helm. And the best place to start with all three of those things is learn.microsoft.com, because we actually have learning paths that will walk you through that exact step. Understand a container, play with it locally, and then start taking the steps to get it out into Azure.
That's awesome. So, as we're about to wrap up here, we have about 5 minutes left. I think one of the great things I want to talk to, especially whenever I get to talk to Abel, one of the things I get very, very excited about is comparing different tools to do the job, right? So a lot of people have talked about Azure Pipelines and how great they are. People talk about GitHub Actions, how great they are. We alluded to this a little bit earlier, but so where do you see people making their choice between using GitHub Actions and Azure Pipelines? Since they are things that do similar things, they are two different tools that do similar things, but in different ways, right? So using your, developer hat, which is the one that you like using and not, I don't know, like using is the right word, but which one do you prefer using in certain scenarios? I guess that's the better question.
It really depends, right? So if I'm starting a greenfield application and my code is hosted in GitHub, I'm probably just going to use Azure, or I'm probably just going to use Actions because it's right there. It's just simple. I'll just use it. If I need some more advanced features, like I'm doing an enterprise grade project and we need to have automated gates of some sort, well, I can't do that using GitHub Actions. I'll probably use Azure Pipelines, right? So it really kind of depends on what I'm doing. If my source code is not in GitHub, well, that's a no-brainer. Of course, I'm going to use pipelines then. So again, it really kind of depends. Depends on what I need, depends on where my code's at, and depends on the features that I need.
That's awesome. And I think one of the things that's super exciting about not just GitHub Actions with Azure Pipelines is about innovation, right? Not just sending code somewhere using some antiquated tools, but using best of breed tools to do what we're trying to accomplish. And I wanted to finish off talking about ACS a little bit with Bob, because I think with ACS especially, it's not just writing some code as a developer. It's not just doing a couple things in the portal. There's all sorts of great integrations that you can do with ACS right now. So you want to talk a little bit about those, are?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so we appeal to basically all the way down to the low-level coders who want APIs, developers who want SDKs, developers who want SDK components. We just launched a new UI component framework that's in preview that you can use to help more quickly build in your system. And then I think that for the low or no-code users, Logic App is a great option. We showed a demo of that where we can trigger an event and then automatically send out an SMS. If you want to do things like conversational AI, then you can go design those experiences using the bot framework and integrate with the telephony channel. But we also integrate with products like Event Grid, for example. So if you want to take full control over notification of chat messages, or maybe you want to build some more of like omni-channel, then you can actually get all those events in Event Grid and then take control of the ultimate delivery of that.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Bob. So we're about to wrap up. I want to give Donovan an opportunity to just get people more excited about some of the stuff that Microsoft is doing, right? We have a whole rest of the day here. We have all day tomorrow to talk about some of the great things they're doing at night. And, as we've gone through this talk, we've talked about ACS and all of its different great tools. You talked about some of the great DevOps topics. So what are some other things that people can be looking forward to through Ignite and then through the rest of the year? You're mute, Donovan. You're on mute, Donovan.
So one of the things that I would definitely be on the lookout is we're already talking about Build too. So we talk about the rest of the year. There's going to be another big event, an opportunity for you to come see what we're doing for innovation when it comes to developers and how we're trying to make your lives easier. For the rest of Ignite, I mean, again, this is really hard for me to say, go look at this one session, right? Because there's AI and ML content there's going to be coming out. There's going to be Dapper that we've just released on February, I think it was the 19th, which is going to make writing microservices like an afterthought for people now. So there's a lot of great sessions that I would go and watch for this particular one. But just go try this stuff. That's what I would tell you to do. Most of this you can try for free. Inside of our Learn modules and docs, we'll spin up a sandbox Azure for you so that you can go and try out this stuff and get your hands dirty and learn how to do this. Not to mention the free trial that you can set up so that you can get started and start playing with the stuff that you're seeing us play with as well. And don't use just this opportunity to connect to us. I know a lot of us are active on social media. Ask your questions there if we weren't able to ask them today, because we want to engage with you. We want all of our customers to be successful, not just while we're watching Ignite together.
Yeah, that's a great parting words, Donovan. And one thing that I do want to do is I want to thank the four of you for hopping on here and chatting with us. The session that we just had at 12 was great. If you didn't get a chance to see it, it is going to be ran again later today at 9:30 Pacific time. So if you want to watch it again, or you know somebody that missed it, that's the opportunity to do so. And we'll be having some folks answering those questions for you there as well. So again, I want to thank you everybody for coming on today. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of Ignite. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.